This is Access Ann Arbor.
Hello, welcome to Access Ann Arbor. I'm here in the studio with Carol Dunitz, aka Mrs. President Lincoln. Good day.
Good day. Great to be here, Yael.
This is a musical you've just been finishing and polishing for performing. Tell me, how did you decide to write a musical about Mary Todd Lincoln?
Well, it actually goes back a few years when I decided to abandon everything rational in my life and start following my dream, which from the time I was 9 years old has been to write and perform in musicals. Well, I thought for a long time, what am I going to write about? And I came up with the idea of doing a show about Sarah Bernhardt. The show has gotten great reviews everywhere I've performed it, and I've been performing it for about 3.5 years. But the problem is, I thought everyone knew who Sarah Bernhardt was. It turns out everyone doesn't, even though 100 years ago she was the most famous woman in the world. So I came to the conclusion that I needed to make a selection where everyone would know at least try to choose someone where everyone would know who that person was. And the reality is, everyone knows who Abraham Lincoln is.
I know who.
Okay.
Both of them are.
Both of them, all right. And I thought to myself, this is a great topic. It's also the 150th anniversary of the Civil War. And of course, I wanted to do a role for a woman, so it seemed logical to do a show about Abraham Lincoln through the eyes of his wife. And that's how this came to pass. What was really fun for me is that the music for Bernhardt on Broadway, the first show, which takes place in the 1890s, is very different from this current show, where Mrs. President Lincoln takes place in the mid-1860s, in 1865. So I could write waltzes and marches and polkas, music that reminds you of Stephen Foster and John Philip Sousa. Mm-hmm. What great fun this has been.
That is great. You must have had so much research to do. What were some of the most surprising points of Mary Todd Lincoln's life, or in her years as the First Lady? What were some of the biggest surprises you came across?
Yeah, to write a musical like this, whether it was Bernhardt on Broadway, I read close to 100 books in French and English on that one. For this one, I didn't have to research quite as much, but there still was significant research. It was, thankfully, all in English.
Oh, that's true. There was a lot of French,
exactly.
I think you had to read.
What was surprising to me is I think in general the public doesn't get to know First Ladies as well as the presidents. And Mary Todd Lincoln has a bad rap in history. And so from my research, what I discovered was a lot of this was incorrect. And what happened was this. Lincoln originally had a law partner who didn't like Mary Lincoln. So when Lincoln died, he was the one to write the first biography about him. And he put in all sorts of lies and untruths about her. And then what happened was significant lies were retold by subsequent biographers.
Wow.
Now, more recently, historians have come up with more of the real story, the true story. And she was a remarkable woman. As remarkable as Sarah Bernhardt was, so was Mary Todd Lincoln. And, you know, as Hillary is to Bill, Mary Todd was to Abe.
Wow.
As Eleanor was to Franklin, Mary Todd was to Abe. She was an incredible force in his life, helped shape his views, did research for him, gave him, provided political observations, and helped guide him along the way. So she was really a true partner long before the wives tended to be true partners. She was brilliant, exceptionally well educated, and a great asset to the two of them as a team.
So with all the information that you were gathering and trying to collect and make sense out of, how did you ever organize all of that information in a way that you could pluck it and put together such a wonderful script and write so many divine melodies?
Well, you know, you've asked so many so many questions there. I don't know where to start.
That is my job. I have to ask the questions.
I think, you know, for a person who is a beginning writer, this is a lot more difficult to do. And I know when my kids were in school, I know when I was in school, the teachers always would say, create an outline. And of course, no one wanted to create an outline.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, that's the way you have to do it. You have to know where you're going to start. You make that decision. This is where I'm starting. This is where I'm going to finish. And this is how I'm going to get there. Once you make that determination, then you can go about writing your script. Now, a person who has done more writing doesn't necessarily have to go through all the, like when you were in school with math, the teacher would say, I don't want to just see the answer,
right.
I want to see how you got there.
Yes.
So as you become a more experienced writer, you don't have to go through quite as many steps. But I think the interesting thing for me with this show and with the earlier one is that, and part of it I think is subconscious, they went full circle. In this show, it starts out with Mary Todd Lincoln, talking about how much she loved the theater. And when she met Abe, she knew there was something because he loved the theater too, so immediately they had a common interest. It turned out that politics was certainly a common interest also. But in any case, we start out with the theater. And there are references to shows they saw, famous performers, including John Wilkes Booth, to Edwin Booth, John Wilkes' more famous brother, who was a great Shakespearean actor who actually saved Robert Lincoln, that is their eldest son's life. And then we move through and we're taking different turns in the play, and the show ends as she and her husband are about to go to the theater. So it comes full circle.
I see.
And the challenge with a one-person show, which both these shows are, is to keep the public, keep the audience interested. Mm-hmm. And with a one-person show, you don't have someone else who you're interacting with whom you can build tension. So you have to figure out how in the monologue you can do it, and how also you can work with your audience to create tension. Now, in this show, there's something very interesting that does that, because you see, the musical Mrs. President Lincoln takes place the afternoon preceding the president's assassination. So Mary Todd Lincoln, and by the way, she was never referred to as Mary Todd Lincoln during her life. It was always Mary Lincoln, even though history has presented it differently. But anyway, Mary is all excited. The war is over. They're so excited about the future. They're going to the theater. They're going to have such a wonderful time. And here's this tension because she's so excited and so thrilled about everything that's happening. And the audience knows that in a couple hours, it's going to be all over. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the last song, which she comes out to sing, you know, everybody's applauding. You come out and you do your reprise. It's called There's Nothing Like the Theater. It's a very happy, upbeat song, although some of the lyrics do suggest what is imminent in history.
Can you do a little bit of that?
A cappella, why not?
Okay.
So here's one verse. She sings, there's nothing like the theater to set your mind at ease. Uh-oh.
It's all right. We're not the audience of the performance.
Well, no, and actually,
and I know you're just working on the memorization.
I'm just starting to memorize.
Right.
So let's try one more time.
Okay.
A melodrama's parts are stock, but always sure to please. The heroine will make us cry. The villain we will boo. But everyone has such great fun with all the ballyhoo. Ba-da-dun-dun-da-da. So you get the idea. It's very upbeat.
That's a very sweeping piece. And this is the last one she's singing before she's, I guess, gathering things to leave for the theater.
For theater.
Wow.
And again, so there's tension built. One way I've done it is because she's all excited and upbeat and about the
And
future.
everybody but her
knows that in a
what's
couple
gonna happen.
hours,
It's going to
it's
all be
her
different.
life is going to be
Yeah.
is going to dramatically change.
That's crazy. Now, you must have written and revised and written and revised. Is there ever an end to revising the script, or do you? How does that work?
I think what happens, and again, I mean, I've been writing professionally my entire adult life, so it's a little different than someone who's starting out. You come to have a sense of what works, what feels right. You don't, and then as you start learning it, you recognize that maybe instead of a contraction, obviously you're not going to have contractions in this era, or instead of a certain word, you figure it feels right to use a different word. So you make minor changes like that. The other thing that happens is when you start performing in front of an audience, you get the audience response, and then you find if you're expecting a certain response and you don't get that, and you get something different, then you look at it and say, well, what do I need to do to change that? Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example. With Bernhardt on Broadway, the last line of the show, there was a song that followed, but the last line of the show, as it was originally written, was, I am great, which she was. She was great. But you know how the audience responded? They snickered.
Wow.
So I knew that something had to be changed by their response. And so what I did was I changed it to my public calls me great.
Ah.
And that made all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the same thing, when I start performing the show, I will find by audience response, if there's something somewhere where I missed,
Right.
I'll know because the audience will tell me.
Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a difference in the writing you do as for a one-woman musical, for notably historic
Sure.
figure,
Uh-huh.
versus the writing that you're mentioning. You've been writing all of your life, and I know that you had a successful marketing business and communications business. So you must be using a lot of your skills, professional marketing skills, to market or communicate to the public about this. So how does that play into doing your own PR versus somebody else's? And also, there must be a difference between the types of methods you use or approaches you use when you're promoting Sarah Bernhardt on Broadway, versus Mary Todd Lincoln, Mrs. President Lincoln.
Well, there are a couple things I'd like to address here. The first thing you talked about is the difference in the writing. I think one thing that I've always been able to do is capture the way people speak. So whether I was writing a speech or writing a script or writing some other kinds of literature or websites and so forth, writing it in a way that sets people at ease and makes them feel comfortable. There are times when you have to write in a very formal way, but with marketing and communication, less often. So I think it's a matter of transferring those skills and using them on the stage instead of, let's say, for a speech for a high-level executive.
Right.
As far as marketing, I had a successful career, whether it was for businesses or individuals, had some outstanding campaigns, and I thought that marketing for the theater would be very similar. It's not. The problem is, if you're performing a show, and like Bernhardt on Broadway has gotten amazing reviews everywhere. I mean, if I feel depressed, I go read my reviews.
There you go.
And my testimonials. The problem is, it's like in the old days when the performers used to go from town to town to town. You don't stay very long. Mm-hmm. So if you're going someplace for one show, one performance, or two performances, mm-hmm. There's not time for word of mouth to get going. There's not time for the first few performances maybe not to have that many people, and then subsequent ones to build. Mm-hmm. It's been quite demoralizing because I have tried absolutely everything. And the response, when the people who come absolutely love it, but it's tough to get the bookings and tough to get enough people into the auditorium. So after giving this tremendous thought, I decided to take very, very dramatic and drastic action to make these shows, both of them well known, because the music, I write music like Richard Rodgers or Cole Porter, the kind of melodies that you walk away humming. And I believe that the public wants that. They like that. They like a song that's going to stay with them for their entire lives.
Sure.
Well, advertising has changed since I had my agency, in that there is such an important emphasis on what?
I'm
You tell
supposed
me.
to come on.
Yeah, that's right.
In marketing,
Yeah, how have things changed?
it's all electronic, and it's not person to person, and it's
social media.
It's removed.
It's social media.
Yeah, that also.
In one way it's removed, but in another way it's right
in your face.
Oh my God. All right, so I said to myself, here I've got the best musical on Broadway, and by the way, I've got that URL, and that's actually the best musicals on Broadway that I have.
Yeah,
two of them.
that's awesome.
But bestmusicalonbroadway.com. Okay, I've got a great blog which I'm starting up, and I decided the way to make this happen after trying radio interviews, TV interviews, ads and newspaper, you name it, absolutely everything. I said to myself, I've got to go to the center of musical theater on earth. And where is that?
That's New York.
It's New York,
Oh.
and it's not just New York, it's Times Square.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it's not just Times Square, it's Duffy Square. Duffy Square is where the TKTS booth is.
That's right.
That's where people congregate. They stand in line for hours to buy tickets to musicals that have been successful but are now maybe winding down a little,
Right.
and they can get a ticket
Right.
for 30%
Right.
or 40%
Right.
off. So I decided that this summer, both Bernhardt on Broadway and Mrs. President Lincoln are going to be on Broadway in Times Square, on Duffy Square. I'm going to perform them on alternate days in costume. I've had special costumes made, and people can see these two outstanding shows in person. They can talk with me, they can ask me questions, they can have pictures taken with me. I'm going to have a blog that recounts what happens every day. I'll be sending out press releases to the media. People will come up to me, want to have their picture taken with me, want to have video taken with
Right.
me, and what are they going to do with it?
They're going to send it on the internet.
Sure, they're going to post it on Facebook and
Facebook.
Instagram and
Right.
YouTube, all over the place. So what's going to happen is they're going to do my marketing for
That's
me.
great. That is a great idea. Well, I look forward to seeing you on late night TV. I'm going to see you.
It's gonna happen.
You know what I want? I want Jimmy Fallon to come down the street
It's going
and come and sweep you away.
You know what? I will be surprised if it doesn't happen.
That's right. Well, that means I have to start watching every night.
I'll give you a heads. I'll give
Come
you a
the
heads up.
warmer weather.
I'll give you a heads up.
That's
I promise.
great. That's
So
wonderful.
this is going to happen beginning of May.
That's
the game
fabulous.
plan. And I've got great signage and a little cart with a GoPro and electronic guest book.
Right.
And I'll of course have flyers with booking information so that they could, when they leave New York and go back to wherever they came from, whether
Right.
it's Japan or Atlanta or wherever.
Or
they'll-
Boston.
Okay, they'll have their flyers with them so they know how to contact me
Right.
or my agent and
Super.
book the show.
Best musical on Broadway. That's all they need to know. So, I thought, I don't know, I had this idea that I could interview you as if you are Mrs. President Lincoln. So I've got a few.
I was going to do that, but I'm sorry there was some, as they had here before we got started, some technical difficulties.
Okay, but maybe there was a time machine problem.
Yeah.
And maybe you have been put inside of these modern clothes. And then I have a few questions, but I have to select the ones that
Ask away.
first of all, what attracted you to Abe Lincoln, and where did you first meet?
Well, I'll tell you, I met him. There was a place on Aristocracy Hill where all the well-off lived, and I lived when I was single at that point with my sister and brother-in-law. And there was a coterie of people who involved many attorneys, Patrick Henry's grandson, who took a liking to me, a number of famous people, and they would come, and of course Lincoln at some point joined them, and a lot of people thumbed their nose at him because he was tall and gawky. his coat was too short and his pants rode up, high, and his stockings didn't match, and he talked like a farm boy. But I saw beneath all that a jewel. I was very interested. In fact, there is a polka in the show where I'm talking about how excited I am when he came and asked me to dance.
Really?
And
What
he
is
was
it?
not a fine dancer, I can tell
Oh.
you. So it's a comedy, that song.
Oh, what's the name of the song? Do you remember?
It's called.
Can you remember?
Yes, it's the If polka, and it talks about if he was. If is the biggest word in the dictionary.
That's true.
But ultimately, let me fast forward.
Okay.
When we decided, he proposed, and we finally decided to get married. It happened just like that, not like usual, where there'd be time to bake the 36-egg cake, and preparation happened within several days. And he put a ring on my finger at the wedding service, and when I took it off, I was astounded, because inside, do you know what he had engraved?
No, I understand there was something engraved, and that was one of my questions. What was
Love is eternal.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, what could be more romantic than that?
I don't know. I have goosebumps.
So there is a song, of course, in the show called Love is Eternal.
Oh,
I
wonderful.
wouldn't be telling you that in character. But now let's see if I can get through one verse of this one.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Romeo pined for his Juliet. When has such love been star-crossed? Guinevere burned for her Lancelot, then found that all was not lost. Tristan fell sick for Isolde, praying the ship's white sail soars. Your love is eternal, our love is eternal, and I am eternally yours. Da 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 da, and then into the next verse.
That's great. That's great.
So from the very beginning, we both shared an interest in the theater. I was fluent in his favorite subject.
Well, what was that?
Why, politics,
Oh,
of course.
oh, okay. Oh, so political
And I have
themes.
to admit, there was this electricity surging through both of our bodies that one could not ignore.
Mm-hmm.
And I must tell you, that has never dissipated.
So I take it that was kind of I didn't know if I should ask it, but you've opened the subject.
Are we in court? You're
no.
like Abe Lincoln in court.
No, just you got along well on an intimate level.
My dear, we got.
Some people wonder. I mean, he was so tall. You are short.
Well, I don't think that is not what chemistry is about.
No.
That we had a very deep and strong connection all of our lives.
That's fabulous. Fabulous. What are the issues? We're pretty keen on President Lincoln's political stands and subjects that were of import to him. What in particular, if you could name one or two favorite or keen political interests, did you have?
Well, I think the interesting thing is Abe grew up in Illinois, and I grew up in Kentucky. And I watched every day slaves being chained together, walking to where on the chopping block where they put them up for sale, or when instances where they would be tried without a jury, without the benefit of that, and punished. I grew up in a household where the slaves were treated like family, but not all people treated their slaves that way. And I had much stronger feelings about slavery and abolishing it initially than Mr. Lincoln did. We never called him Abe. He was always Mr. Lincoln. Or father, of course, when we were talking about the children. Mm-hmm. So I think that in some part, my views impacted on him. He wanted to abolish slavery, but he thought it should be a more gradual process. And with my input and the input of Senator Charles Sumner, he more quickly made changes in his viewpoint. And in fact, when there was the decision to have the Emancipation Proclamation, he put it forth to his cabinet, and everyone voted against it. And then he raised his hand and said, the ayes have it, because this is a point of minority rule. And so that's the way it went.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
We're cheering for Honest Abe. He has our voice, so we're sure to win. No fearing with Honest Abe. He is stout-hearted with waters uncharted. And then it goes on.
Right.
So
that's fabulous.
that's one of the marches. Very
Yeah.
upbeat.
So there's a very it's a big mix of triumphant or nostalgic or creative types of lyrics, and the writing of the show is going to give us a full spectrum and a look at and into who Mrs. President Lincoln was.
Well, I think what it does is it gives you a totally different viewpoint than you typically see. And now I'm going back to being myself.
Yes.
In other words, you learn about her, you learn about how the public treated her and Mr. Lincoln, because they thumbed their nose at the Westerners.
Oh yeah.
Very tough on that. You learn her viewpoints, the viewpoints of others. You learn about how what women's role in the Civil War, men's roles. You see a very rounded picture, which you don't usually get. You usually just hear about the battles, for instance. And there is a song about the Battle of Bull Run, by the way, which is great fun. And I don't know how many of the viewers know about this, but it was like Nero in Roman times, where people would come to watch the gladiators killed. For the first Battle of Bull Run, people actually hired carriages to go watch the battle. It was a spectator sport.
Wow.
And they were, from 25 miles away in Centerville, they were watching, and then they were totally shocked. They expected the North would win, and it obviously was a devastating battle for the North. They came, they watched, and in the midst of it all, everybody was rushing to their carriages to ride back, and then they were fighting for space on the road with artillery and wounded soldiers.
Wild.
So there's a song about that. And the songs, that's the interesting things. The songs are not just plumped, right here.
Right.
They actually forward the action.
Right, and they fit in with the lining, the timing of the script, and so
That's essential.
it carries us. Yeah, it carries us through. It tells us a story, perhaps in 1 or 2 hours of time right before President Lincoln is assassinated, except that we get to come into your room and we get to hear all sorts of
Personal stories and anecdotes.
Stories, absolutely.
It's fascinating, and it really, when you read history in school, it's a lot of dates, and it doesn't come to life.
Right.
This show brings history to life.
Well, that's
Mrs.
great.
President Lincoln brings the Civil War era to life, and the costumes too. But that's
great.
to
That's
see
great.
later.
Yeah, I'm very eager to see it, and I plan on visiting Times Square at some point between May and, well, actually I'll be in New York in June. I'm attending a family affair.
Well, it's a fait accompli, I guess.
All right.
And
well,
by the way,
great.
she did speak French fluently, by the way.
Oh wow.
So
I don't think I can go into anything else. I think I have to be wrapping up now.
well, I hope our viewers, some of our viewers will come to New York and enjoy
All right.
too.
Well, let's say goodbye, and perhaps we'll see them there.
Thank you.
I don't know if I've got one.